Hello and welcome to the Midwest Dynasty Fantasy Football Podcast, where we break down every single week of the Dynasty Sleeper League fantasy football season. I'm here with Cody Holla.
Hey, everybody.
And Sam Betland.
Well, howdy do.
And we're here to break down week 4 of the fantasy football season. Really excited to bring you some real knowledge coming from the smartest guys in the room here podcast. And first, I want to run through our agenda this week. This week, we got a nice week 4 FF headlines to run through really quickly for the three of us, followed by some matchup rundowns like we always do, trying to keep it nice and brief with some real analysis. Then we'll go into our power rankings for the first time this season. We have not yet done this, so we're really looking forward to bringing you guys our true shame versus fame rankings. And then we're going to do a next week preview and try to do some predictions. So without further ado, I want to turn it to you, Cody. What was your generic week 4 fantasy football headline?
I think mine had to be Robert Tonyan being the one to step up in the absence of Devontae Adams and Alan Lazard. I was interested to see who was going to get all the targets. And at first I was like, okay, is it going to be Darius Shepard? Is it actually going to be an MVS? And those guys performed okay, but not great. But then Aaron Rodgers did unlike Aaron Rodgers things and relied on a tight end. Finally, this is like what fantasy owners have been speculating for like the last 3 years of, if Rodgers gets a tight end he likes, he's going to just go to him. And like people thought it was going to be Jimmy Graham, and it never was. It never was. And then Robert Tonyan's here, and it's just like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm just going to go off. That's honestly my headline.
Yeah, and go off he did. I mean, moving forward, you have to imagine he's a TE1 for sure. And it's interesting to see with all these tight ends in the last couple of years that have really gone off, it'll be interesting to see if Tonyan actually does too. So, Sam, what's your week 4 fantasy football headline?
I'm going to go with another specific player, and I'm going to go Calvin Ridley on the opposite end of things, really coming back down to earth, which I know Adam's not so happy to hear, as he needed 4 points from Ridley to win, and he got 0.
Yeah, it's a bit disappointing. I actually do want to talk about Ridley a little bit later on, so we won't talk about him now, but my week 4 fantasy football headline is, as I was combing through players to talk about, an hour before our podcast, I just kept thinking this stagnant thought of, why do we still have defense, special teams, and kickers? It's 2020, and as we're trying to ring in a new president in the election, I feel like it's time to ring out defense and kickers. I mean, do you guys agree with me, or...
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't think they're that fun. I don't like playing the matchup more than the actual player, which is all you do with defense, and kicker you don't even look at.
I think for me, it's fun in the way that it's troll, right? Like, I don't actually think it adds value to the game. I think it can be fun sometimes to have a kicker go off, and then you feel like you troll beat somebody, but you don't really feel that great about it. So, honestly, looking at our other league where we don't have that, it feels really nice to feel like you're looking at only 4 sets of players, and you're just like, okay, let's actually pick who the best player is, instead of just saying, yeah, let's just throw this defense in there and hope that they do well.
Yeah, I'd really like to move forward, or at least consider moving forward from those positions, because there's no real analysis week to week. I mean, if this podcast has shown anything, we never talk about them, and that's for good reason, because they're very unpredictable and they're very matchup based. So, yeah, I don't have anything more to say about that. So without further ado, let's break down the week 4 matchups. We're going to start with 5 of the average matchups and then finish with the matchup of the week, which is yet to be determined. So let's start off with Laramie Davies and Jake O'Brien starting off here, as I'm sharing on my screen. Laramie scored 157 points rounded, and Jake O'Brien with 166. And so just going down with Ryan and Montgomery having, fairly lackluster weeks. Sanders, not up there, but, he's still a solid young stud at running back. I actually want to talk about Michael Gallup. He's had 3 in a row now starts that he has not been a solid wide receiver, and he's kind of below average. And I think the question I want to ask is, has CeeDee Lamb securely taken the wide receiver 2 in that offense?
He did. He actually had a good week in week 3. But yeah, other than that, he's been pretty bad. And CeeDee Lamb has looked fantastic. If you can't put up points when Dak is throwing 450 yards every game. I don't know if you're going to put up points going forward. So I would say yes is my answer.
Yeah, I completely agree here. I mean, like, even the one game that he did really well, he got 9 targets, whereas like every other game, he's only had about 5 targets, and he really hasn't converted them. He's only converted about 50% of those targets. So like out of that 15, he has 7 catches. I mean, if you can't convert the targets that you do get either, you're just going to fall off. And I think it's clear, with the eye test that CeeDee Lamb is just better.
Yeah, I 100% agree, which is why I kind of posed the question. It was supposed to be a softball question. It's really interesting. I mean, CeeDee Lamb, we talked about him last week too. So I think we don't really have to talk about him anymore. CeeDee Lamb's the wide receiver 2 in that offense. Dak Prescott with 500 yards again. He should be a solid wide receiver 2 moving forward. Okay, so moving on from Michael Gallup, I actually want to scroll down a little bit past some solid studs. Interesting to note that Robbie Anderson, to me, is now wide receiver 1 in Carolina, but I really don't want to talk about that because I want to talk about Joe Mixon, who had a huge game. Positive game script being highly ahead, but this was the game we were looking for from Joe Mixon finally, because he had a low snap percentage the first 3 weeks and just low games overall, and now he's finally high volume. So the question I want to ask is, should we be expecting RB3 Joe Mixon moving forward or RB1 Joe Mixon moving forward?
I'm actually going to go out kind of on a limb here. I'm going to say in between. I'm going to say RB2. And the reason I'm going to say that just for the next couple weeks, and maybe this is, he's got a couple tough defenses coming up here with Baltimore and Indianapolis. Those have game scripts of being down, which I feel like when they're down, they don't really use him as much. He's kind of underutilized, whereas they finally got their first one against Jacksonville here. So I actually see him maybe, trying to get a touchdown here or there to get RB2 status, but not going off like this to be an RB1.
I'm going to plant my flag, and I'm saying he's a solid RB1 rest of year. I think he's honestly going to crush it. That offense has been pretty good, and without A.J. Green doing anything, and Burrow's only going to get better. I think this offense actually is going to have a ton of production going forward. Given the next couple of weeks, I agree, he probably won't be elite, but I do think he ends as an RB1.
It sounds like a good dollar bet. Let's do it. Let's do it. Dollar bet. Lock it in.
Line's RB12?
Yeah, line's RB12 for ROS.
So an early dollar bet of Sam versus Cody. Sam erring on the side of RB1 for Joe Mixon, Cody RB2, with the obvious implications of more than 3 games missed is voiding the bet, I assume.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's great. I'm glad that sparked a pretty positive discussion there. I actually do want to scroll up because I'd forgotten that I did want to talk about Matt Ryan a little bit after last night's game. Positive game script for Matt Ryan and still only 12 points. I'm going to click on his name because you'll see that 2 straight weeks in a row of 12 points from a quarterback that's normally pretty high quality. Am I making anything out of this, or is there any concern to be had in Atlanta?
To me, I'm not overly concerned. He was missing. Obviously, Julio was gone like half the game and banged up the rest of it. Ridley's still banged up. He still put up 285 yards and I believe no interceptions. Yeah, no picks. Overall, it's not that bad of a game. You just mix in 2 touchdowns and he's up at 20 points. I think he's a fine low QB1, high QB2 going forward.
Yeah, I think I agree with that for sure. It is interesting to see how the Julio and even the Calvin Ridley questionable injury designation that he had going into this game, just how they play out going forward into the future. If they're going to consistently be injured and not being able to play or not being 100%, you could see more games like this, which would cause some concern. But I think by all accords, they're supposed to come back healthy. And once both players are out there, he's, back to putting up those 25 plus weeks.
Good. We all agree. That's great. I do want to scroll down to the bench, and I want to highlight Rob Gronkowski. We haven't actually really talked about him much on this podcast, but I want to pose a very simple question. Is he droppable in Dynasty leagues?
Oh, I didn't see that coming. It's getting to that point. I still don't think he's quite droppable, but I wouldn't start him until proven otherwise.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with that. I think he's clearly been, the bottom tight end out of all 3 of those guys there between O.J. Howard and even Cameron Brate. You look at him and you watch him play. He, again, we always talk about the eye test. He does not pass the eye test. He does not look electric when he gets the ball in his hands. I think he's kind of just blocking there. I think we kept thinking that, okay, he has that connection with Tom Brady. That's what's going to build him into being a good tight end again, and it's just not there. And Tom Brady has way better targets that he can go to anyways, so he doesn't need to go to him. I don't think he's gonna ever need to go to him this year. I think he's debatably droppable. I think if you want to hold on to him just for the sake of holding on to him with the low chance that he turns it around, sure. But dynasty value, he's pretty worthless to me.
So I'm actually going to go and be the verdict here because I think he is droppable, with several of the players, especially in the COVID season, being very valuable. We've already seen James Robinson. Obviously, he was before the season when you could have made this prediction. But a guy like Myles Gaskin could have been picked up and had the roster spot over Gronkowski. So I think he's droppable, and there's nothing to hope for in his future. This is him right now. There's no future Gronk to hope for. I think it's time to drop him and go your way with him. So that's Laramie's team. Any other players you guys wanted to highlight that I missed?
Nope, that about covers it for me.
Yep.
Fantastic. I want to talk about Jake O'Brien's team now. He scored 166 points, got the victory, had solid weeks from a lot of his studs, including Melvin Gordon, who had 30 points this week. I'm going to round up. A couple touchdowns, solid workload. But you have to wonder, with Philip Lindsay aiming to come back next week, Melvin Gordon is currently an RB1, but does Philip Lindsay drop him down to an RB2?
Yeah, quite clearly he does. Positive game script here, especially against the Jets, resulting in 23 carries. I don't know. He's going to fall back down to earth. They're going to split those carries out for sure. And I don't know. It feels that way to me, at least.
Yeah, I totally agree. He'll lose out on the receptions at the running back position. On top of that, they didn't even have their starting quarterbacks. They're going to be throwing a lot more. And then positive game script. I'm looking right now, and against New England next week, he's projected 10, which is a lot more reasonable than what he's been scoring.
Yeah. Again, we agree. It's really interesting because Melvin Gordon is obviously a stud running back, in his whole career he has been. But that offense just, in my opinion, cannot produce enough for him. And Lindsay was a stud before he arrived. So we agree. So let's talk about his second running back in his RB2 slot. That's Darrell Henderson. We were just talking about last week how excited we were about him because they finally realized that he's better than Cam Akers. Then Cam Akers got injured, and he had a solid week just a week before. 21-point weeks twice in a row. And now, with Cam Akers out, it's just Darrell Henderson and Malcolm Brown. And Darrell Henderson had 5 points. Is there something to make of this? Can you trust anyone in that running back field at all, including Henderson?
Not at the moment. I think when Akers comes back, potentially he was drafted highly enough and thought of highly enough that maybe he'll be a good player, but I wouldn't be starting Darrell Henderson unless you absolutely have to at this point.
Yeah, 100% here. You can't trust it. I know he had 2 weeks of really good production that seemed like he just ran for an insane yards per carry, to me at least, and I don't think that's sustainable, and it obviously wasn't last week. His snap percentage, he still hasn't gotten over 50% snaps yet this year. I don't know. I don't trust any of those running backs, honestly. Not this year. Maybe Cam Akers in the future, but they love Malcolm Brown. They still love using him, no matter how many times you keep thinking that they're just going to have one established guy, kind of like they did with Todd Gurley. They just won't commit to that.
Yeah, and it is worth noting that Jake does have Todd Gurley that he can slot into the RB2 slot, and then he has plenty of flex options. So I wouldn't be concerned if I'm Jake O'Brien. It's just a bummer that he's not someone at least that could be a trade asset.
Yeah, exactly. And Lev Bell's coming back too at some point.
Yeah.
Jake also has. So.
Yep. So definitely has been hit by the injury bug a little bit early on, Jake has, but I think that his team is good enough to make the playoffs and overcome that for sure. But one player that he's, in my opinion, counting on quite a bit to be a high caliber team ever since he traded for him was AJ Green, who, as I just clicked away from the matchup, I'll click on AJ Green again. He's bad. He had two straight games to start the season of very high production, high volume, and then a man by the name of T. Higgins came into the picture, and Tyler Boyd just continued to be Tyler Boyd. Is AJ Green, does he have injury concerns, or is he just being phased out by T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd? Is Joe Burrow not his number one target? What's going on here?
He is very slow. You can just watch him on the screen. He just doesn't have that explosiveness, and I think it comes from past injuries. I would argue for maybe AJ Green. Maybe you never know if he goes on a new team next year and has a full off season to recover. Maybe he does come back and gain a little bit of that explosiveness, but not this year. I don't see it happening this year. He doesn't look good, and I don't think Joe Burrow really goes to him that much anymore. Yeah, I mean, he gave him that week 2? He gave him 13 targets. He only got 3 balls. Like, I think that's enough. Like, either drops or bad I don't know. There has to be some drops or some miscommunication there, because I don't think a quarterback misses a wide receiver 10 times in a game just off his own skill, especially with Burrow. So I don't know. I think he's going to be a low. I think he's going to be a wide receiver 3 going forward, if not a little bit lower. Personally, I'm really down on him.
Yeah, I completely agree. And actually, to kind of have an answer to your question, I'm going to misquote this, but AJ Green, when thrown at this year, it's something like a 45% catchable rate. So like 55% of the throws at him are literally uncatchable. So it's just something between him and Burrow is just not connecting at all. That Burrow's just either overthrowing him or underthrowing him. Just been brutal. But obviously he has something with T. Higgins. So yeah, I'm not a fan of him anymore. But like you said, maybe if he goes on a new team, he'll be better.
So the question I want to ask about Jake O'Brien's team is, with no clear wide receiver 3 now, because AJ Green is not going to do that week to week. Jarvis Landry to me is not a reliable option as a wide receiver 3. Do we start, and with Baker Mayfield being down and even T.Y. Hilton being down, does Jake O'Brien have the chance to be a bye team? And what I mean by that is being one of the top 2 teams, more like we thought before the season, or is he no longer in consideration for a bye at 3-1?
I still think he's in consideration for sure. I do think his team has taken a hit this year, but between Jarvis Landry and Edelman, I do think that those are still 2 players that I would be happy with as my wide receiver 3. So I think he's got the depth for it.
Yeah, I agree. Especially when Le'Veon Bell comes back, that's another asset being thrown in there that he can replace for Darrell Henderson. And say even Lev Bell puts up a high RB2, scores week to week. I think you don't need to have a good wide receiver 3 in order to sustain to get the other bye.
Well, there you have it. Jake O'Brien's still in contention for a bye, so you got to think he's a top 4 team at least. We'll talk about that more in the power rankings. Let's move on from that win for Jake O'Brien and talk about Cody Hollett and Ben Fowler. Starting off with Cody's team, they're true. I hate to laugh every week, but I did highlight some players I wanted to talk about because,
cool.
But it's not for the reason you would think.
Is it Lynn Bowden?
Junior. Don't forget the junior.
It's funny you say, because Lynn Bowden still has not shown up in Miami. But you know who has is Ryan Fitzpatrick. 23 points again this week. But a little bit struggling this week. Actually, some talks that maybe Tua might take him over. Regardless, at the moment, he's a solid QB2. Should Cody be looking to trade him and get a real asset for right now? There's a lot of teams that do not have a QB2.
Yeah, it's actually funny you mentioned that, because we talked about this literally 2 hours ago. And given Fitzpatrick's 37, he's going to be the starter for 2 or 3 more weeks maybe. But I mean, a lot of teams need a second quarterback. You needed a second quarterback last week. I know there's a couple other struggling teams. Maybe even pull a third or a couple of fourths or something. There's just some value you can get for a team that's rebuilding.
Yeah, there was kind of a clear reason I added him to the trade block last week. It's because I am looking to move him. He plays no part of my team, and if he could help out any team, even just for a couple weeks, I mean, I think most teams would say that's worth a 3rd-round pick. That's basically just like a dart throw, like a complete dart throw with a 3rd-rounder. So, yeah. So if anybody's interested and really wants him, I mean, I'm selling him, and I'm really only asking for about a 3rd. So keep that in mind.
So there you have it. Cody actually is actively looking to trade Mike Fitzpatrick. My assumption about him was not incorrect. Jerry Jeudy, 2 for 4. Only 2 receptions, hauling in 1 awesome touchdown. I don't know if you saw that highlight.
Yeah,
stealing it
that was
from
insane.
That was nuts.
Howard. That was really great. And just having a consistent season overall, to me, you got to wonder, is he just going to improve with Drew Lock coming back?
I think I want to say yes. I think he has to improve with that, but there also has been something about Courtland Sutton being out here and him being the number 1 wide receiver that I think might balance that out a little bit. I actually just kind of foresee him being consistent like this all season long. And then maybe next year or the year after he takes the next step, because he looks really good. I think it's just getting that time in with Drew Lock and establishing kind of that chemistry between them. And once that takes off, then I think he'll turn into that wide receiver 1 that people were speculating he might be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think he's played pretty solidly this year. Nothing special, but every week between 55 and 62 yards, so just hyper consistent. I think kind of a fun tangential question here is, before it was a clear tier with Jerry Jeudy by himself in most people's opinions, But now, with the two other rookie wide receivers coming in, Jerry Jeudy, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. If you were drafting right now, how do you rank them?
Probably CeeDee Lamb 1, Jerry Jeudy 2, and Jefferson 3 for this season.
Jefferson has the most yards.
I know he does, but he also doesn't have that high of a target share. So I'm a little bit concerned about for this year's value where he might be moving forward.
Sure, I actually think he's going to be the best one for this year, just because like the last couple of weeks they've definitely used. I know I've watched the Vikings games, but they've utilized him a ton more in the last couple of weeks compared to the first 2 weeks. But Clay, what do you think?
So you're saying just rest of season, not Dynasty?
Either way,
I think Dynasty, I might take CeeDee Lamb over Jeudy now, especially from looking at it. I think just the fact that CeeDee Lamb is going to be the clear wide receiver 2 in an offense that will, because Dak signed an extension, right? Or no?
I don't think he has yet.
Ooh, then I'm not sure. Then that actually changes a lot of things for me, because I think if Dak signs an extension, then yes, I think CeeDee Lamb is clearly going to be over Jeudy. But I think if Dak doesn't stay there and he's still the wide receiver 2 on that team and they have to go with a different quarterback, I'm not so sure about him. And I still trust Jerry Jeudy's ability. I mean, it's only been 4 games, so I'm not really sure if I'm willing to dethrone him that much. Everybody's literally been raving about his like route running skills still and say he's like one of the best. And he made an insane catch, and he's been playing with not 1 but 2 backup QBs the last 3 weeks. So I think I'm going to leave Jeudy at the top. I'm going to make a kind of, I don't know. I don't know how to put it, but
so in other words, all 3 of us have different wide receiver ones in those tier. But I think that is clearly the tier that is kind of coming out of that wide receiver class. And I think I'd be happy to own any of them.
Yeah,
so that's really cool that they all hit. Yep. I want to talk about Christian Kirk, actually, because for your team, in the scope of your team, if we were just talking about Christian Kirk as a rest of season asset, we would just say, yeah, he's way down. Even with Kyler Murray excelling as a quarterback in the NFL, he's not going to Christian Kirk. Now we have a situation where Christian Kirk has had no more than 5 targets in any of the 4 games this season. Obviously, he did not play against Detroit. But are you concerned about Christian Kirk being a startable asset for your team in the future?
Yes. I think short answer is just yes. How can you not be concerned about that? Like, just watching him literally, I mean, a touchdown saved his week last week, or else he would have just had 3 catches for 19 yards. If DeAndre is going to keep getting this amount of receptions, and this is going to be a forward thing in the future, I don't know, unless he takes a huge leap in his 3rd year, which he could do. You know, wide receivers still can have that 3rd year leap that they make, but he's going to need to stay healthy. That's going to be the biggest question for him. Can he stay healthy? Can he actually look like a dominant receiver like he was last year? And if he doesn't stay healthy, I have my concerns.
Yeah, I totally agree. DeAndre is just taking everything right now, but it should come a little bit closer to the middle, I would think.
Okay, so there you have it. I guess you can start him next year in the future, and you will be willing to build off of him in the future. So he is still a young receiver, just in his 2nd year. And I do just want to finish talking about your team with just 2 points, and you guys do not have to comment about this. George Kittle proved that he is a stud, even without their starting quarterback. And then I did want to mention that Stidham did get some action at the end of the game last night after Brian Hoyer did get benched because of how bad he was. And I was I think Stidham actually looked pretty good. So that was half a sentence, but
he had 2 picks and 13 passes.
I know he did, but one of them was not a real pick.
Sure.
It was dropped by Amendola, and the other one was just garbage time. He was chucking it to the end zone.
Yeah,
Other than that, he looked poised, in my opinion.
I didn't watch enough to make an informed decision.
As a former,
but I'll listen to you.
Yeah,
I'll listen to you.
I think he's worth owning in Dynasty, is what I would say, as a quarterback. So now I want to talk about Fowler's team. Because this is probably one of my favorite topics I want to talk about, because just last week we covered the trade for Kenyan Drake, winky wink, Kenyan Drake for Saquon Barkley. And now we're looking at Fowler, who's clearly positioning himself as a contender after 178 points rounded up this week and moving to 3-1. But Kenyan Drake had 3.5 points, and he actually did just look actively bad in that Cardinals offense. Am I right? Is he actively bad? Was this the right move after only 2 weeks after the move happening?
No, I mean, to be honest, I didn't necessarily think it was the right move in the first place. But I think Kenyan Drake bounces back. I think he'll probably end, like, at this point, he'll probably end at like a high running back 2 compared to what I thought he'd be a low to mid RB1 before. But
Yeah, I don't know when he also sustained that injury, that chest injury that he had, but that could have been, if he got hit early on and that was playing a factor, maybe he was like really worried about getting hit again. I don't know. I'm just speculating here, but I think it's too soon to judge it. But again, yeah, when we were talking about the trade, I mean, is that what I would have done in Ben Fowler's position? No, that's not what I would have done, but it's too early to tell.
Yeah, it honestly just looks like DeAndre has torched everyone's value but Kyler's on that team. So.
Yep.
Yeah, I will comment that last week we said we were more willing to see both sides, and it seems like from hearing you guys now, it seems like maybe you're saying I can't see both sides. I think there's the Saquon owner is the winner.
Sorry, I could and I still can see both sides, but I did say that Saquon is the win. I mean, Saquon's just inherently worth more, although I do get why he did this, and I still get why he did it.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. We've already talked about all of Dallas quite a bit in the first 4 weeks of our podcast. Dak Prescott and is just incredible. DK Metcalf is a stud. Aaron Jones is a stud. Fowler's team really is good. But do you believe in Dalton Schultz? Now with 8 targets, as a tight end, he's actually being fairly targeted on this offense now, and it seems like he's really a product of his environment. Do you believe he's a tight end 1? Is he in other words, is he a startable tight end for a competing team?
Yeah, I think he for sure is. I think anytime you're getting those type of target numbers where it goes 10, 6, 8, yeah, you're a starting tight end.
Yeah, I totally agree. He still fits in a category of like, can you start him? Sure. Do I care about starting him? Not really. So I think he's good though.
I asked because that's really good for Fowler's team as a team that really is, like I said, trying to make that step up from previous years where he really hasn't been a competitor. That's great that Schultz showed up from him. Just that bench stash just really turning out for him. And then finally, I do want to address the point that he does not really have a valid super flex position at the moment. Teddy Bridgewater is probably his best option. I'm surprised yet again he didn't start him.
Yeah.
But do you guys have any comments about his super flex position?
I mean, he started at quarterback. I'm just not sure why he didn't start Teddy instead of Mullins, but that seems like a personal problem.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he was just optimistic of Mullins from last week. And then he just thought he'd have a couple more touchdowns because he's like, Giants defense and Eagles defense. I mean, probably from a projection standpoint, I think Nick Mullins was projected 19.55 last week, just where he was at. And I think Teddy was projected 19.45. So it actually, like, as far as like where they were projected, it was kind of a toss-up between them. So I don't know. Maybe he had an inkling why he liked them more than the other.
I'm going to go ahead and say moving forward, he should be starting Teddy Bridgewater if he wants to continue to be a playoff team.
Not this upcoming week, though, when he plays me. Still Mullins.
Yeah.
Noteworthy, yeah.
Yeah. If you want a QB, like Ryan Fitzpatrick, I can let him know.
That isn't... I honestly think that would be interesting for him. So Fowler pulls out the win once again, proving he is a competitive team for sure. Just needs a bit more out of his Kenyan Drake asset that he just acquired. So let's talk about the next matchup. Matt Magnuson squared off against Mr. Sammy B. Sam Betlin with his lowest outing, and Matt Mags with a fairly standard outing for him and 155 points. But right off the bat, I do just want to scroll way the heck down to a position that I was very confused about. In that Matt actually started Devin Singletary over in his flex position over Jerick McKinnon. Do you agree with this decision?
I could really go either way. I mean, obviously looking back, Jerick McKinnon would have been the better choice, and but yeah, I don't know. I think Singletary's good too, personally.
Yeah, I think. I guess don't quote me on this, but did Zach Moss? He didn't play. Yeah, he was out of action. Which is why I think they went with probably went with Devin Singletary. Whereas like with San Fran, I feel like I know like it seems like Jerick McKinnon's finally kind of earned his spot and this and that, but they always felt like a team where you didn't know which running back was going to go off. Like even with Raheem Mostert before he kind of established himself, it was like, well, what if Jeffrey Wilson had a good game and Jerick McKinnon was nothing? It's like, I'll take the guy that I know is going to get carries and play a huge snap percentage like Devin Singletary over Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah, okay. So there really wasn't much to talk about there. That was a fine decision. It's really just leading me to fully analyze Matt's team as a whole. As this podcast is mainly about this league specifically. You scroll right down after his flex position, you look at his super flex, and right above his flex position is his tight end. And those two positions to me are dire for Matt to solve. And I guess I just want to ask, between Kirk Cousins and Chris Herndon, If Matt wants to fully compete moving forward this year, which does he have to address first?
Well, he does have Phillip Rivers too, by the way.
True.
And he hasn't played that great either. I don't know. I still don't think Kirk Cousins and Phillip Rivers as a super flex is necessarily a hole. Maybe they don't end as top 24, but they're not going to end below 32. So.
But can you really have a non-top 24 or non-top X position anywhere as a playoff team?
Sure, probably not. But I mean, okay, so for reference, Kirk is 22 right now. Sure. Right? So like he's definitely underperforming, but I think he'll be fine when you're comparing him to players like Mullins. You know what I mean? Like if you can stay on the field, it'll be good. I do think that Herndon is a serious issue though.
Yeah, I agree. The tight end's way more, to me, he needs to address that right away. That's really alarming. I mean, if you look at Kirk Cousins, even with, being QB 22 right now, that also is including a negative 1.5 game against Indianapolis. Other than that, it was 21-21, and then, about 15 last week. So definitely still, startable. It's not awful right there, if you exclude the 1 week. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I do not like Kirk Cousins. I've made my position very well known about this for a long time. But from a fantasy perspective, Kirk Cousins is always going to get his stats. He's always going to get his stats.
That's 100% true. So I'm glad you guys talked about this, that you need to replace Chris Herndon, because I propped this up for the next question, which is there's two assets on Matt's team that are new to his team, and they'd be new to any team. And those two are James Robinson, who came out of kind of nowhere, and Justin Jefferson, who really wasn't expecting to, in my opinion, was not expecting to be a huge wide receiver asset until next year. So if I'm Matt, and I'm currently not starting Justin Jefferson, but James Robinson also has that dichotomy of, do we believe in him yet or do we not? Is he just part of the Jags offense? Would you be looking to trade either of those two or someone else to get a tight end?
I wouldn't be. I think you have to hold on to those guys. I think James Robinson, if you believe in those players, you definitely hold on to them. I think Justin Jefferson's way too early to sell just as a player in general. I think you can't see a guy do this type of production and then just be like, I'm going to sell him right now, especially when he's a first round pick. Like he was like number 6 overall. So I don't think you can sell him that early. James Robinson, you could. Just taking a quick look at his team here, but then you'd have to rely on Singletary or Lindsey or somebody else to.
I think he's got a lot of options with Damian Harris too, which is why I thought maybe that'd be a good. He should trade a running back.
Sure.
It's actually funny for how bad his running backs were to start the season. Now they've all just increased so much.
Yeah, I think I would still be wary of it, in my opinion. I mean, eventually Raheem Mostert's going to come back, and we'll see what McKinnon does. I get that he's done well as a pass catcher, and even when Mostert was playing, he was doing fine, but I'm more not sold on those guys' performance below James Robinson compared to where I do feel sold on James Robinson.
I completely agree. I would keep your core that you have right now, and that is including Justin Jefferson. Personally, if I had Justin Jefferson, I wouldn't even consider selling him for a tight end less than Mark Andrews, and I don't even know if I would do it for Mark Andrews. That's as far as I'd go to say that. But I do think Jerick McKinnon could be a really good option to sell because he's on Matt's bench. Yes. He's temporary value. And sell him for one of those mediocre tight ends where you just got to get someone in your lineup, basically. Even if that's Tanyan. You know what I mean? Like, what are the odds that Tanyan keeps playing this well when Devonta Adams gets back? Probably not. But, he'll still be better than Chris Herndon and Kyle Rudolph.
No, that's really great. That's what I kind of wanted to hear, that there are options for him. I thought, to me, it's the running back position where he should be addressing, looking to sell someone off, because it's really great that he had a lot of hits.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about the current 4-0 team, Sam Batlin, which I normally don't like talking about much, but I do want to immediately talk about Mike Davis, who now had 22 points again, 16 carries, and I really this isn't a discussion to talk about Mike Davis. It's actually to talk more about Christian McCaffrey, because I want to ask, is Christian McCaffrey more of a system-based running back than we realize?
Well, I guess in my opinion, every running back is a system-based running back. So yeah, he definitely is. And Mike Davis has put up 22 and 23 the last 2 weeks. I think in those 2 weeks with similar production and play calls, McCaffrey would have put up 30 and 33. So yes, he is, but I also think he's a very good, a very talented player.
Yeah, it's just kind of duality. I guess that's what I was going to say, Cody. to me, he's definitely helped by his system. I guess what I'm trying to realize or get at is that I realize he is helped by his system more than I thought previously. And I think Mike Davis is kind of showing that. Do you agree?
Yeah, but I think that's generally any running back. I mean, I think the fact that Damian Williams on Kansas City could be considered an RB1 just shows that system plays such a huge factor. I think the fact that, like, and this isn't even a knock on him. I do like Alexander Madison, but there's a reason why every person has it where if Cook goes out, Madison becomes a debatable RB1.
Oh, for sure. I think,
Right, because it's just your system. So to me, this isn't really too much of a surprise. I think I agree 100% with Sam. It's if you look look at Mike Davis versus Christian McCaffrey, you see a clear difference in their ability. It's just that the game script is always the same.
In that Mike Davis is way better.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because one of them is going to be dust, and
Yeah, but when does Mike Davis become dust?
He's already 27.
just take a look at his picture. Okay, bad joke. Moving on from that. Sam, are you concerned about Julio Jones at all?
Oh, yeah, I actually am. I wish he didn't come back, but I obviously likes to try to play through injuries. Yeah, I don't know. I guess short answer, yes, I am concerned. He probably won't be an RB1 or a wide receiver 1 this year.
And your wide receiver 3 slot.
Yeah.
Darn.
Yeah. Assuming you have no comment about that, Cody?
No, I mean, I kind of agree. But he does look kind of old. If you look at his picture, he's got a beard now.
He is kind of old.
He's 31. But
for football.
Yeah, I actually didn't know he played this last week. I thought he was out, but that doesn't affect my feelings about Matt Ryan previously.
He was out 80% of the game. So.
Yeah, no, I know, but I meant
that percentage. So yeah, for a competing team, injuries don't have feelings. So
yeah, I've noticed. That's why I have handcuffs.
So it's funny because I was looking over your team quite a bit, and I also noticed that all 3 of your defense are just ass.
Oh yeah, it's bad.
So have you considered addressing that situation?
Yes, I have reached out to everyone that has more than one decent defense and gotten shut down every time.
You haven't reached out to me.
Yes, I have. For both of your defenses, Vikings and is it Seahawks?
When was the last time you contacted me?
Before the season.
Oh, before the season.
You knew your team was going to be shit.
No.
I think you said, I just want to keep the defenses for next year or some shit like that. I guess what it comes down to for me is I'm not going to pay a second. I've offered a third for any decent defense and no one has taken me up on it.
Okay. So
still open to that. If anyone wants to give me a decent defense, I'll give you a future third.
Let's talk after the podcast.
So contrary to belief of what I just said earlier in the podcast, defenses do matter.
Well, I guess they do matter in the fact that I will only pay a third for a top 10 defense.
That matters.
It's value, but barely.
It's still value. So you did pull ahead in the commissioner battle that was you versus Matt. Good job. You're 4-0.
We should make a commissioner's cup.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. So when you, Trujillo, and Mags all play, you can just see who ends up with the commissioners.
You mean like a cup
I like that.
That we like tape to their mouths so we don't get to hear about them bragging when they win?
I haven't bragged once yet. Yet.
That's the key. You have to win first. Yeah. Real win, not just regular season win.
I hope the season gets canceled after exactly 10 weeks. So I win without playoffs. Just a giant asterisk.
You know, me too, depending or based on how the lines have been so far. Just cancel the season.
Canceled.
Just COVID it out.
Yeah. Cancel culture.
All right, let's talk about Eric Barber and Adam. So Eric Barber got the narrow victory over Adam, and we already talked about this a little bit before the podcast. I'm sure Adam is really unhappy with that because it was depending on Calvin Ridley, who is a now fantasy stud, getting 0 points. But starting off in the top left corner of this matchup is QB1 for Eric Barber, which is Tom Brady. And the reason I'm pointing out him specifically is in the past we talked about how we really valued him this season as an older quarterback, being high-end QB2, but we wouldn't necessarily be happy with him as our QB1. I'm quoting exact words that we said before. And now he's rattled off 2 solid fantasy weeks. And he has some fantastic weapons. So are we changing our opinion from week 2 now after 2 more weeks?
I mean, I'm not going to knock it off completely, but I think it's like he might be a low QB1, probably high QB2 is kind of where I'd place him at, erring more on the side of the QB2 side of that. I mean, I think it's a really great week for sure. And yeah, I just think when you're that old, you just never know when injury bugs can hit, especially. And it's also the fact that Evans is injured now. Godwin is injured now. even like there are a couple backups. I think Justin Wilson is injured, and
I think they're top 4 receivers.
yeah, they're top 4. I'm trying to think who the other fourth one is.
But to me, that would be the argument for him being a QB1 because he's playing this well without those weapons.
No, but Mike Evans was in the game.
Mike Evans was, but Chris Godwin wasn't. So
yeah, but that just seems like a fluke to me then, more than anything.
Sam, do you agree?
Overall, I still don't think he's going to be a QB1. I think I've moved the meter from like QB 18 to like QB 15 though. So
interesting.
He's proven something different to me.
I want to start a dollar bet then. I'd be willing to say that I think Tom Brady will finish like anywhere from 10 to 12. Strictly because I've seen enough from what I want to see without Godwin being in that offense and Bruce Arians' offense specifically. I think Tom Brady will get enough volume. He's actually becoming more of a volume quarterback now. Where in New England he wasn't, and now you're seeing he's had 35 plus attempts. I don't think he ever had that in 4 straight games in New England. So I think he is a QB1. I'm willing to take that against both of you.
Sure.
All right, we'll both take it.
Yep.
Fantastic. That's what makes it fun.
Done and done.
I want to scroll down to, well, first off, I do want to point this out right now because it's a good time to. Eric Barber did manage to sneak a victory after having 3 players in Sony Michel, Devontae Adams, and KJ Hamler out.
Yeah, just a reminder to whoever actually listens to this podcast, if you don't set a legitimate lineup and you have players on your bench you could have started, then it's potential for both teams to lose. So if Barber would have lost here, both teams would have been treated as a loss because he didn't set a legitimate lineup. So keep that in mind going forward.
But isn't that just because of late injuries? Like Devontae Adams and Sony Michel were going into Monday night with the opportunity to play. So if he actually believed that they were going to play and he didn't have an adequate replacement, which he just didn't.
That one, maybe. I guess KJ Hamler actually did play. Those 2, maybe. I think that would have to be a discussion because there are still several players you could pick up.
Oh, just instead? But doesn't everything have to pass through the waivers at that point? You can't.
No.
Okay.
No, Sunday and Monday are instant.
Yeah, maybe that's a good discussion point because I wouldn't think you would have to sacrifice your roster positions, especially if you're like, say, like you have a deep lineup and you don't want to drop somebody good just to fill an order of somebody going out at the last minute. That doesn't seem very fair to me.
Sure. Yeah, I think this would at least be a discussion, but I just think it's a good reminder for everyone. It's like, I mean, you didn't set a legitimate lineup. It didn't matter, but like you didn't.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I was actually almost about to message Mags to be like, can you just move in players for me just for the sake of giving me points? I'm still going to lose, but just
competitive integrity.
Right. I don't even care.
It's definitely a discussion we can start up again because it's happened a couple more times this season, even after we thought we had solved the debacle last year. And I was part of that debacle. I do want to talk about Kareem Hunt. He had 11 carries with 71 yards and 2 touchdowns not all of that after, but combined with the fact that Nick Chubb is out, that's a huge part of Kareem Hunt's value moving forward now as Nick Chubb will be out. Do you think, does Kareem Hunt move into the RB1 conversation?
Yes, absolutely. I think he does. I think the fact that he was putting up solid scores with Nick Chubb in the lineup, like everybody kept saying, like it literally what was holding him back from being an RB1? Nick Chubb. Mm-hmm. Nick Chubb is now out. I think he's going to get all the volume. He's going to get all the receptions. I don't know. I think he is personally.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's at least in that conversation while Nick Chubb is out.
Awesome. So that's great for Barber's team, considering that he might want to make a quick run and has a reasonable enough team. We already covered how CeeDee Lamb for sure took over Gallup as the wide receiver 2 in that offense. But one of the final things I want to talk about here is, again, in the spirit of talking about the competitive nature of teams, you'll notice that Marvin Jones has been very subpar. Is he no longer a wide receiver 4, which is the line I say is a startable asset on a team? Does he have to be benched moving forward?
I'm not sure. You certainly don't want to start him, but I think he'll play a little bit better. I do think the fact that Galladay was banged up probably had some impact because he's played better when Galladay's in. But even when Galladay's been back, he's been bad too. So who knows? I wouldn't start him if I had anyone else, but like if you're on bye week struggles or whatever, yeah, sure, maybe a flex spot.
Yeah, that's a tough line to draw. I think if you have to start him, but I would never want to start him.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it's just a point I emphasize, and it's just unfortunate that he hasn't had a clear wide receiver 3 or 4 even step up this year. So it is kind of why we normally said Eric Barber is not in that playoff conversation. So now let's talk about our star child, Twyler Bernold, Adam Wentz.
Twyler.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Twyler Bernold.
Twyler, that's the official.
And Twyler Bernold. Trust me, I've had it ringing through my ears for the past 6 months.
Oh, I'm sure from Adam. You do indeed live with Adam, and I'm sure you've heard a lot from him about Kyler Murray, who has really just taken off, and we already kind of, before the season, knew and thought that he would be a top 5 quarterback. He's currently sitting at quarterback number 5, but I just wanted to note that it seemed like, because I watched part of that game, that the game plan seemed to be designed to kind of take the ball quickly out of his hands and just like do quick snaps and throws, and they weren't trying to utilize his ability to actually get out of the pocket and extend plays. And even when he was running, he was like sliding exceptionally early. Like there was one play where he lost like 20 yards out of it. So I guess the overarching question that I want to ask is, are you concerned at all with Cliff? This is a macro question.
Sure.
Concerned with Cliff Kingsbury's direction on the Cardinals offense?
Not for Kyler Murray, I'm not. Specifically. I mean, he's shown that still puts up great stats. And I mean, with him, it's like seems like it only kind of limits some of his throwing yards more than anything else, but he still gets the volume in touchdowns. He still gets the volume running. He is the closest thing to Cam Newton as a goal line runner to me. Like as far as in the NFL, maybe compared to Lamar Jackson, obviously, but
Josh Allen too.
Yep. But he's at least in that conversation now.
Yeah.
I mean, when you run for 4 touchdowns in what 4 weeks, I think you're in that conversation automatically.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's gotten a ton of points from running this year, which is just huge. And then, I don't know, he's just been consistent. I think turnovers are a big issue, but that's typical for a young quarterback. I mean, it's only his second year. I'll give him a break. I think he's going to be really, really good going forward.
Yeah. Initially, I did want to touch on DJ Moore, just because I know that a lot of people were really high on him as a dynasty asset. You know, some people had him even as high as wide receiver 1. And we already kind of alluded to this, and then I said we should talk about him more later, because Robbie Anderson used to be like just the stretch the field guy that was really only a deep asset, and now it seems that Teddy Bridgewater is using him for everything. So do you buy low on DJ Moore right now, or is he just where he's going to be?
Oh, I would definitely buy low. If there was any opportunity to still get DJ Moore, I would. I love his talent. Just watching him, I think I would be a little bit concerned. To me, I guess I was going to say maybe with Matt Rule's game plan, I could be a little bit concerned. But Teddy's just a bridge quarterback. Teddy's not going to be there. You know, he is a bridge quarterback. He's not.
It.
That's another fun I didn't realize.
Is he a Bridgewater quarterback?
Yeah, it says bridge under the water. Or water under the bridge, whatever your preference is.
Would you call it a love boat?
But no, he's just a bridge quarterback. So I could see even as soon as like next year or the year after they get a new QB, and then it's all new preference, which I think DJ Moore has a better long-term solution as being a part of that team than Robbie Anderson does.
Okay.
Personally.
Sam, you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think Moore is definitely taking a hit this year, but I still believe in his talent for sure. It's honestly to the point where I think I might take DK Metcalf over him. But yeah, overall, I still really like him as a player. And if you can buy him for like the price of a high dynasty wide receiver 2, that's a great price in my opinion.
Sure. So in other words, he should definitely hold on to him, and he should plan on starting him when he wants to start competing more often in a couple of years. And that's really all I wanted to get at. Calvin Ridley, we already touched on him, 0 points. Just, you hate to see it because we already know Calvin Ridley is a stud in fantasy moving forward. But Austin Hooper had 14 points, and we just talked about him a couple weeks ago, how that might be a position that Adam needs to address. But with the 14-point week, is this something now moving forward that you're excited to own Austin Hooper, or is this just a flash in the pan?
This is a flash in the pan. I mean, he got a touchdown, which kind of bailed him out, which is, well, Sam has said this repeatedly. It's just that he's again in that position of if he gets a touchdown, he does well. If he doesn't, he doesn't do well. And I think he's solidly there.
Yeah, I agree. Total flash in the pan. I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of having most players on that offense, but certainly not him.
So Adam still needs a tight end, in other words. And I think if he, now that he's 2-2, he has to really make that decision whether he's going to compete or not. And another player that really needs to step up to make that 2-2 divide maybe more stronger towards the competing is N'Keal Harry. I know we're high on N'Keal Harry, but it seems like in that New England offense, even with Cam Newton playing, whoever's at quarterback, N'Keal Harry has not stepped up to being the wide receiver 1 on that offense, which I think you kind of wanted. And I don't know if he's going to have enough production to be a real fantasy asset moving forward. Do you guys agree?
I still believe, maybe against my better judgment. I don't know. He's looked pretty good when he's played. He's honestly had, I think, 2 pass interference in the end zone, which you would basically count those as touchdowns. And he's been without Cam Newton for a game. And he played a lot better with Cam Newton. Is he ever going to be a dynasty receiver 1? Probably not. But I mean, maybe you can squeak out a year or 2 of low wide receiver 2 production.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry,
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, is that not a big statement though? Because when you draft him, when Adam drafted him, he was hoping he could be that wide receiver 1. You're kind of, I think we're all maybe agreeing that he doesn't really have that potential. Just he's not the kind of wide receiver that will step up to wide receiver 1 territory on a team.
I don't know that he doesn't have the potential still. From watching him, he looks like he could. Do I think he'll get there? No. I mean, I don't think he'll get there, but I mean, like, just keep in mind with DeAndre Hopkins, it took him like 3 years until he became in that category. Like, I don't think D-Hop actually performed all that well his first year. And the reason why I say that is because I think I owned him in his rookie year. And that's, if I'm looking here, he was wide receiver 51. I guess he did take a big step up in 2014. He became number, 14 wide receiver. So I guess there was that, but I don't know. Different wide receivers call for different things.
Sure. And I guess if I'm Adam, I'm watching that closely and really hoping that something happens over the offseason or starting next year, maybe if the quarterback situation changes in New England.
Yep.
So I do want to move on. Eric Barber does get that narrow victory. They both moved to 2-2. Both teams that, maybe need to take the next step up to actually be competitive. So let's talk about Marcus Goniewski and Mike Reed, who maybe later on when we talk about the power rankings are both teams that maybe do not have that chance to step up into the playoff conversation. But immediately I want to talk about Josh Jacobs because without just pulling the wool over our eyes, immediately he went from having 36 points week 1 to just having lackluster production, less snap percentage, just about as many attempts in week 2, but weeks 3 and 4 saw way fewer attempts, and pretty, average yards per carry. I mean, the concerns with Josh Jacobs when he was drafted was that he would not be able to have a high workload because he didn't have it in Alabama. Are we seeing that in action here after 4 weeks in the 2020 season?
Do you want to take this one?
Sure,
I don't. That's a big question.
I would actually love to take this one. I love Josh Jacobs. I think he is the buy low in Dynasty right now. He crushed it against Carolina. Obviously, it's Carolina. They suck. And the great game script is huge for him. Then he went against New Orleans, New England, and Buffalo, who in my opinion all have pretty solid defenses. Kansas City, I also think is a solid defense. So this might be a tough week. After you get past the bye week, Tampa Bay, Cleveland, Chargers, Denver, Kansas City again, Atlanta, Jets, Indianapolis. Like, most of those are going to be really solid. If he still is putting up 10-point weeks after that, I'll change my tune. I still for sure have him as an RB1 for the season.
Oh. Cody, do you have him as RB1 for the season?
So top 12 to clarify.
Yeah. Yep.
I gotta be honest, I don't really have any strong opinions about him. I think I'm still trying to formulate them right now, but like, Sam that's a good argument. That's a really good argument. And like his projections kind of follow suit from that. Even though given the fact he was projected pretty high against even these last 3, and with the New England, they were leading. So I thought like he would get more carries as a part of like game script.
20 touches isn't bad though.
20 touches isn't bad, but I guess he just needs touchdowns then. Maybe that's what's holding him back. But I mean, I don't know.
Part of it.
I think the fact that he's not a very good pass catcher does hurt him a little bit. At least he doesn't seem to be that effective with it.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I mean, he's had at least 3 every game. Obviously 3 for 3 games.
But they also
but they're not a lot of yards. Like 3's fine, but it's pretty low for his yards per catch, though.
I also want to note that they've been taking him out for 3rd down in favor of Jalen Richard, which it takes away from Josh Jacobs' value as a whole, definitely. Especially if moving forward, the Raiders actually look forward to maybe drafting a pass-catching running back in the future. I could see that being I'm going to go ahead and say I don't think he's a Dynasty RB1. moving forward, and I think he's more like high-end RB2, and I think even for this season he's not an RB1 because of what I'm seeing right now.
Is that a dollar bet?
It is a dollar bet. I want to be wrong because I also like Josh Jacobs, but I think they will address the receiving running back position at some point, and I think we're going to see like a Kamara Ingram situation in Las Vegas moving forward.
Yeah, so they're both RB1s.
Okay, Kamara Ingram without the RB1 on both of them.
Not actually, and yeah, you could be right. And if they go out and draft a running back in the top 3 rounds, I'll also change my tune on that. I just think they invested in this guy. He's played well when he's been in the game.
But just not the last 3 games.
I think he has played fine. I mean, and against good defenses.
Yeah, 15 carries for 48 yards is not a great game.
No, it's not great, but it's not horrendous.
Okay, something to note moving forward for sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just interesting to note. Carson Wentz, he finally played okay, and they won a game. Is there anything to make of this?
I'm still really scared of him.
Yeah.
I mean, fantasy-wise, he played okay, right? He put up 193 yards.
Yeah. So,
I don't have really much to add. I mean, he did it against a pretty good defense, but I don't know. He's got a lot of things to figure out with that offense. I still said this last week, and I'll say it again. I think he needs a new team. I don't think he should be on the Eagles.
Yeah, I think I agree. I was really just asking if you guys saw anything because I watched that game too, but I'm just like, no, I don't. It's sad because even if they won a game, he still didn't. It wasn't a commanding win because of Carson Wentz. But keep in mind, he has like no receivers on his team.
Yeah, they did. By the way, his actual attempts did go considerably down compared to his first 3 games, where he was throwing in the mid 40s. He only had about 28 attempts this time and had about 18 completions on that. So that might attribute some of the lower yards. But again, the turnovers there and his turnover ratio scares me.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, something to address for the Eagles and for fantasy teams everywhere. Anthony Miller is just off on. Is there anyone to trust in that Chicago Bears wide receiver core other than Allen Robinson?
Oh, no.
I was going to say Allen Robinson. No, other than Allen Robinson, I don't want anyone
Absolutely
right now.
not. Nope.
That was supposed to be a quick question. Yeah, so again, this is, I think, part of why I'm bringing up these players is because it's part of the reason that Skoniewski just is not a competitive team this year, is because these players we're talking about just are not making that step up that we would hope they would, whereas other teams are having players take major steps up.
Other than Herbert.
Other than Herbert, but I don't want to touch on him again because we've talked him like every week.
I like talking about him every week.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
He's pretty awesome. So the macro-based question I wanted to ask about Marcus's team was, with Jacobs, Carson, Gibson, and Mostert all being running backs he owns, do you have to, in similar to Matt's situation, do you have to trade one of those running backs right now? Or do you, if you're Marcus, do you hold on to them for the future?
I think you'd have to trade Carson or Mostert. In my opinion, I think Mostert's maybe not the perfect person to trade right now because I feel like people will be scared when he comes back from injury. I think Carson's the perfect person to trade right now for him. He's not. I don't want to degrade his team, but I don't think he's. I don't think he's going to playoffs, and even if he did, I don't think he'd go anywhere if he went to playoffs. Just because he just doesn't have the wide receivers to keep up with it, and he clearly needs one and could get one for Chris Carson. So that's what I would address if I was him.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think keep the young guys, Gibson and Jacobs, and then I would for sure sell Carson. I think Carson is definitely worth a late first at this point, and if you can scoop that up and you have players behind him, might as well.
I love when we agree because that's exactly what I was looking at. I was like, wow, that's one way to really make his team better. And I actually did reach out to him, so it's funny because after I thought about this, I messaged him thinking like, oh, you looking to trade running backs? Or trade running back for one of my receivers because I have a plethora of receivers.
You're going to give him Tyreek?
Nope. Although I could see someone wanting Tyreek. He's good. But nope, that's not something I'm looking to do right now. Okay, so that's Marcus's team. He actually did get the victory with 138 points this week to 109 points of Mike Reed, who is just a struggle bus. He moved to 0-4 on the season, and really I was trying to think of things to talk about that we haven't talked about already, but one of the glaringly obvious things was actually Darius Slayton. He had 3 catches, 7 receptions. I think the main thing that I'm getting at is, can you guys just explain the Giants' offense to me and their wide receivers?
It's bad.
Well, do you want to trust somebody? Because you can't.
Yeah, it's like we just talked about New England, who N'Keal Harry hasn't stepped up as the wide receiver 1, but we're not saying that their wide receiver core is bad because they have Harry and Edelman. This is the opposite situation. The Giants don't have a wide receiver 1, and they don't have a wide receiver that's even capable of being wide receiver 1. So,
yeah, that whole team is a disaster. Truthfully, like it's just all really bad. Defense, offense. I can't think of one good player on that team without Saquon there. Can you guys?
No, I can't. I don't even really like Devonta Freeman or any of those guys that came and replaced him. One thing I do want to note with Darius Slayton, because I'm sure he'll do it again sometime this year. Do you know he's never gotten 20 points in a game? He's either gotten under 20 in his career or over 30, and he has 3 games over 30 in like a year and 4 games. So it's not like it's that small of a sample size, or I guess it is a small sample size. Sorry. So for him to have that, that's like. It's like you look at these 3 games and you're like, wow, what happened to Darius Slayton? Where's he going to go? And then it's like, I bet you in like the next 3 games, he has another 30-point week. And then we're like, oh, is this for real? And that'll be Darius Slayton.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah.
So in other words, you can't trust Slayton, which is just another position for Mike Reed that he has to address. And just looking at his team again, he started Keyshawn Vaughn and Jeff Wilson this week. I mean, I'm really trying to just be as modest and honest as possible when I ask this question, but what are you hoping for on Mike Reed's team?
2022.
Yep.
Maybe later.
I mean, Cam Akers on the bench there, so hoping he probably develops into something. If the Fournette thing killed Keyshawn Vaughn, which is really unfortunate for him, I'm sure he was really trusting him going into the year.
It's already Rojo's job anyway. I mean, I always thought Keyshawn Vaughn was overrated, but I don't know. Mike does have good talent on the bench. He has a lot of early seconds this year, so hopefully those pan out.
Yeah, you really got to hope so. It's just, I'm sure Mike is thinking the same thing with us. So I want to, without further ado, move on to what I've proclaimed the matchup of the week.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Which I promise is not biased, but it might be a little bit, but I really don't think it is because it was the closest matchup, relatively speaking, in points and how it could have shaken out at the end, other than Adam's matchup. But also 2 teams that we identified before the season as top 4 teams in Tom's team, that's me, and Matt's team, who Matt now moves into 4-0, clearly separates the divide between he and I as far as who is 2 or who is 3. But immediately about my team, I actually want to point out Brandon Cooks, who the 3 of us actually own him in a separate league, and now he is wide receiver number 84 in PPR with Deshaun Watson as his quarterback. Brandon Cooks is a former 4 season in a row 1,000-yard wide receiver, and now he's just non-existent in the offense. Do we have hope for Brandon Cooks at all?
I don't. Not anymore. I don't. Personally, maybe I'm jumping off the ship too fast, and it could be, but when you're getting that high of snap percentages, and I get that he got targets against Baltimore, but then he dropped down to playing 88% snaps and only 5 targets, and then even last week played 94% snaps in a comeback game against the Vikings and still only got 3 targets. He has to have some lingering injury, I think, from that first couple weeks or something that's like limiting him, because historically he's better than this.
Yeah, or he just hasn't developed the chemistry or something. I was super high on him coming into the season. I thought he was going to fill in for DeAndre, not quite to that point, but yeah, another 1,000, maybe 1,100-yarder season. Mm-hmm. It looks terrible. He's getting outplayed by Cobb and Stills. Like, it's not good at all. The only wide receiver I want on that team is Fuller.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the Fuller show. Yep. And yeah, I mean, like I said, we were talking about Brandon Cooks was fringe wide receiver 1 not 2 years ago. And now he's not even startable, which luckily I don't have to start him because I just had a bad week with Schuster out and just random. I don't even want to get into it and talk about it, to be honest. But yeah, I was just completely flabbergasted. And I know you guys have some partial stock in him as well. But on the more positive side, Devontae Parker, dude, like he had a breakout year last year. And then with Fitzmagic as quarterback, I mean, he's like the real deal. And I've honestly had struggles trying to trade him, and I'm trying to ask, since this is a Dynasty podcast, why have I had struggles? I'm evaluating him as a wide receiver 2 in Dynasty. Is that incorrect?
I actually think it is, personally. Okay. I think he takes a huge hit when Tua comes in. I think Fitzpatrick actually boosts wide receivers so much because he just airs it out. And if he throws a pick, who cares? Because he's Ryan Fitzpatrick. Like, maybe he's a wide receiver 2. That's probably a bit too far, but like a low wide receiver 2, I think. Like, probably early second is where I put the value at for him personally.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, even looking at him last year, you can clearly see like probably the difference when Ryan Fitzpatrick came in to become the starting quarterback last year, because he just started literally producing tons of numbers and just getting a ton of targets too. But you got to see how he performs with Tua. I
was going to say.
But I'm not willing to say that he's not an wide receiver 2, but it's like you have to see how he does with Tua. And then this isn't a huge deal. I get it, but he is 27. You know, he's on the. I'm not saying he's on the bad side, but he's not like a Chris Godwin who's like 24, 25, where you feel like they're up and coming players. So it's like you just got to think sometimes about what are all the potential guys that could leapfrog him to push him further down.
Yeah, but for teams that want a wide receiver, I'm just going to put this straight out there. Now, based on what you guys are saying, I'm not going to put it out there because you guys think it's probably insane. But I offered Devontae Parker for David Montgomery, and it was completely flat out.
Yeah.
I value Montgomery way higher.
No, I think that's a fine offer.
Okay.
I also value Montgomery as an early second.
And I value Montgomery as like a low end or mid to low RB2 in Dynasty.
Totally.
Okay,
I think that's fine.
I was made to think I was crazy.
No, it's not atrocious, but I probably wouldn't have done that trade.
As someone that is biased towards Parker, but it's hard not. I mean, he finished as a wide receiver 2 last year, and I'm actually going to say the opposite to that. You would think that too it increases value in theory, right?
Traditionally, rookie quarterbacks do not help value of receivers.
Yeah.
Next year, sure, maybe. But I also just think let's look at Burrow, right? Who's I think most people consider better than Tua, and AJ Green is terrible. Is that on Burrow? Is that on AJ Green? You just never know. But I'm always concerned with wide receivers and new quarterbacks if they're even going to have if they're even going to come together really and have that connection. But. Yeah. And rookies.
Yeah, and I'm not questioning his talent. I've watched him play. He's very talented. He's always needed a quarterback because, needed it in the sense that like he's so talented, but literally nobody could get him the ball, and I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for the record, while Fitzmagic is playing, he's a solid wide receiver 2 in my opinion.
Yep.
Okay. So somewhere in the middle between what I think and what everyone else that I'm trying to trade him with thinks, which is just kind of funny. I'm trying to trade him to teams that need wide receivers, and they're like, no, he's not even a wide receiver 3. And I'm like, what?
It's not even a wide receiver 3.
I've heard that verbiage, yes.
Even with Tua, he's a wide receiver 3.
Even because of what he's done, because in the past he's struggled for so long. And I'm like, you got it.
But that was never his fault.
Dude, I was made to be.
Cool.
Okay, so the final question I want to ask about my team, without going into it too much, is it is just kind of funny that I have 3 breakout receivers. I'm showing my screen right now, but you know who they all are. Rookie receivers: Higgins, Shenault, and Ayuk. Who's your favorite of those 3 receivers moving forward in Dynasty?
Mine's T. Higgins, personally. I think that might be not exactly what we agree with, but I think as he becomes more the number 1 wide receiver for Joe Burrow, it just seems sustainable to me. That I could see for a long time coming. Whereas, like, Ayuk's fine. I like Ayuk, but, you still have Deebo Samuel there, and you still have their running game, which could take away from that. And Shenault, it's the same thing, too. You have Chark, and you still have James Robinson kind of coming around, and I don't really know about that. And I get that T. Higgins has Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd, but I just see Joe Burrow having the highest ceiling out of all those quarterbacks to have the passing yards, and then you need somebody to catch him.
Sam, you agree?
I completely agree with everything you said. To me, it's Joe Burrow makes the difference. So, but they're all really close.
Yeah, I'm really happy. I think T. Higgins will be a wide receiver 2 by next year, hopefully, once he gets sustained.
I think that's reasonable. Yeah, that's actually a good point. I think I would take T. Higgins right now, probably over Parker, or it's at least very close. So that's kind of the range where I rank them.
Which is why I need to trade receivers, because I'm starting like real guys on the bench right now.
Real boys.
Real boys.
Real boys.
Anyway, let's talk about the more interesting team, in my opinion. Matt Trujillo. We've been very off and on about Josh Allen, whether we believe in him or not. Is this the week that you finally got what you needed to see from him to say that he is a top 10 quarterback?
Yeah, what did I not say that last week?
Yeah, I think you might have.
If I didn't, yes. I think he's very good, and I think his passing yards throughout the first 4 games has proven to me that he's not just a running quarterback, which I previously thought is why people ranked him so high. But now I actually think he's a good player.
Yeah, I thought I said I trusted him last week, but if I didn't, I definitely trust him now. Okay. I think he has a pretty kind of easy schedule for the rest of the year too. And yeah, he's a little bit of everything. It's funny to look back on that draft and look at like Baker versus Josh Allen versus Sam Darnold and versus Josh Rosen, and you can clearly see who came out on top. Yeah. A lot of people thought it was going to be Baker, but it's clearly Josh Allen.
It is, and I guess maybe it's because I hadn't believed into him until this week. So you got to keep me honest now, because I'm saying he's a top 10 quarterback, and if I ever say anything different, I'm just wrong. He looks good. Mm-hmm. Stephon Diggs was a huge part of that offense.
Yeah, he's looked really good too this year.
Can we also point out the fact really quick on Josh Allen that he had -1 rushing yards but still ran for a touchdown?
Yep.
That's pretty sweet.
I mean, that just props up the argument for him, honestly.
Yeah.
So, 2 really big hits for Trujillo moving forward here.
Such poor time.
Both Eckler and Chubb. So I want to ask, God, I keep clicking off the matchup, but I want to ask, does he significantly lose his ability to be a bye team with Eckler and Chubb out? Does he need to address that short term?
Yeah, not with this start. I don't think he loses that ability. I would still put him at the front runner for the first or second bye. But if he didn't start 4-0, totally agree. And how long they're out for? Multiple weeks, right?
Yeah, they're both like, I think Eckler was supposed to be 4 to 6 and Chubb was like at least 3 to 5. Like, I guess, so what I'm trying to get at is, like, if you're him, do you have to make a quick like trade for like Jerick McKinnon?
Yeah, honestly, I do think you have to make a trade. You don't want to start Dobbins and Ingram. Those are his next 2 in line. Like, that's not great.
Right.
Yeah, I think starting I think Mark Ingram can get you through as an RB2 to a bye, but yeah, he definitely needs some other asset to be there. So I think McKinnon's a very valuable guy he could try to acquire.
So maybe we're playing matchmaker here, and Matt Trio, if you're listening, like, I think you need to make an adjustment right now, because you are clearly a team that's heading for a bye, but I don't think you want to lose that, because there's people like Fowler knocking on your door that and Jake O'Brien that could really swoop in and swiggy take away the bye.
Yeah, I would love to see a trade between the Mats, because they're in the same division too, so they're each other's biggest competitors. So I think it'd be kind of funny to see what that trade goes down.
See, we're also a love podcast. We bring people together. Yeah. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create real connections.
Okay, so moving on from that note, now that we're a love podcast, I have nothing more to say about the matchups, and I want to move into power rankings. But before I do you guys have anything more to say about the matchups?
No, not a whole lot.
No, I think that covered about everything.
Congrats to, I believe it was Fowler with highest points this week, beating Trujillo by about 0.4.
Yeah, that's crazy narrow victory.
That's big.
Yeah, good for him. And with that, let's talk about our power ranking. So, like I said, I'm actually super excited for this. This is kind of our final segment on today's podcast, and I'm sharing my screen here, utilizing our new video capability.
Bang, bang.
Flex. You'll see on the right, I have all of the teams in a randomized order. And on the left, I have our Week X power rankings. So without further ado, I want to jump into right away. This is a pretty contentious conversation here. Who is the 12th team for right now, 2020's power rankings?
I think it's me.
No, I'm just joking. It's clearly you.
Thank you. I think I do want to preface that with, I guess I'll let us get to the next worst team too, but I would say between me and the next worst team, there could potentially be a scenario where I could have lower points, but maybe if I come away with 1 win, I'm not the lowest team. That's all I want to say. Okay,
so you have no hope of being anything other than 12 this year, but that was by design. That was kind of the point of what you did. So then who is that team that you were alluding to at number 11?
That team is Mike Reed's team, who's also 0-4, but has about 70 more points than me. However, in week 7 or 8, we do play each other. So one of us has to have a win at the season's end. Like, it just has to happen, apparently. And, I mean, if I beat him, there could be the argument that I wouldn't be the worst team in the league, theoretically.
Yeah, Sam, is Mike Reed right ahead of Holla there?
Yeah, I think it's really close. And, I mean, hopefully I don't step on any toes here, but I believe he's trying to trade both Godwin and Golladay. In which case, if he does that, I think his team is actually worse than Cody's, because Cody is Judy and Kittle. So, like, he actually has good players.
What's good?
I mean, Mike Reed's starters, other than those two, are not great, and I think he'd admit that, which is why he's trying to sell and get something
and he should.
For the future. Yeah, it's not like that's a bad thing.
No, not at all.
But yeah, no. So I think it really could come down to. You say it's week 7. I think that really could be the differentiator between who gets the first pick and the second pick next year.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're in a very matured not sleeper, but dynasty league, and so this is going to happen. You're going to have the teams that are really good clear at the top, and the teams that are really bad. And I think that's, to me, a tier of Cody Halla and Mike Reed's teams. And now it gets into more the bit dubious conversation. We've actually had previous conversations about this, but right now is the time to settle this for week 4. Who actually is team number 10 in the power rankings this week?
I'll take this one. I actually think it's Marcus Skoniewski. I think even though he has 2 wins, I think the fact that he has the next lowest points and the fact that he doesn't have any wide receivers at all. So it kind of goes on the fact, like, unless he makes that trade that we were talking about, I just don't see it. I think while I believe in Herbert, Carson Wentz is going, just down from there. He'll have to see if Mostert comes back too, that could help raise his team a little bit. But then again, who are you really starting him over? I guess just Antonio Gibson for another point projected wise. So I don't know. He needs to make a trade. And if he doesn't, then I think it's him.
Tom, I think you're going to have to break the tie because I'm actually going with Barber, who is also 2-2 and is 4 points higher than Marcus. I just, like we've talked about through the podcast, I just think his team is actually overperforming. I don't think Brady continues to do what he's going to do. I don't think CeeDee Lamb honestly keeps up with this pace. I'm just not a huge fan of most of his players, so that's where I'd put it.
Yeah, it's really funny because this is why I said this is the contention point, because I am still sticking with what we talked about a couple weeks ago. I do agree I will be the tiebreaker here. I agree that it is Barber's team is number 10, and so I'm going to put him there.
You put Skoniewski there.
Well, yeah, because Cody said that, so I gotta move him. I'm gonna put Barber there. I think just Barber has less question marks and is more capable of making the playoffs than Skoniewski is. That's why I'm putting him there at number 10.
That's why you're putting Barber there at number 10?
Less chance of making the playoffs?
Less chance?
Oh, sorry, less chance of making the playoffs. Yes,
okay.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, I agree.
Playoff chances is less, which is why I'm putting him there.
I think Skoniewski's ceiling is higher because his running backs are really good.
Sure, I see what you're saying. Yes, I see what you're saying.
Is what I meant. Yes. So then I'm going to put Skoniewski at 9. Can we all agree?
Yep.
Okay. So I don't think we have to talk any more about those two teams. We agree. So that was probably tier, whatever from the bottom that is.
By 5 or so, 4.
Yeah, 4 or 5, yeah. Okay, so moving into number 8. I'm going to start with you, Sam, this time. Who do you think is number 8?
This is where it gets really hard, I think. I think I'd have to go Laramie at this point. Even though I actually do think his team is good. And in my opinion, it's virtually identical to the next 3 teams as far as playoff chances go. But I think I would have to edge him here at, what are we at, 8? Or 9?
8, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Cody, do you agree?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I was already down on his team last week, but I think the fact that I still think Robbie Anderson might be debatably overperforming, and we're only talking about how the fact that we think Michael Gallup's going to go down. I don't think Zach Pascal is still that good. Miles Sanders still hasn't gotten over 20 points in a week yet. I mean, I think there's a lot of question marks with his team, along with being 1-3. I think that has to put him there.
Yeah, and I do think to point out, too, that these teams we're talking about in like the probably 6, 7, 8 range, they're probably not going to make it based on record, right?
Yep.
That's only one. They're not going to be division winners, and they're probably not going to get the 4th seed. But his points are good this year. His running backs are solid. But yeah, he does still have question marks at receiver.
So who's 7?
Oh boy.
So it is difficult.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. Or I'm going to hold my statement. I was looking at somebody who I thought it was, but then...
Sam, who do you think is number 7?
Go Sam.
I think it's Adam, personally. His team's been good. If Ridley can keep it up, that's awesome. He has a big hole at tight end, which we talked about. And I think his running backs are okay, right? But I guess he has David Johnson and CEH, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Like, his team definitely has a good chance at making playoffs, but there's got to be 2 teams that I think... probably should be in playoffs. They can't be because we can't have 8 teams. So
yeah. Cody, have you changed your mind any from the couple weeks ago we talked about Adam's team? Do you still think he's 7 below? Notably below. We're saying. Do you
want to hear something that might be a little bit out there?
Sure.
That too. I'm gonna put Ben Fowler's team here.
Okay.
Here's where I'm gonna put. I think Ben Fowler, to me, especially if Kenyan Drake does not like actually perform where he should be, I think his team's in trouble. Like, he's still starting Russell Gage. I mean, in his flex currently right now, he's Mo Alley Cox. You don't have a good super flex option there. I know he's 3-1, but I'm worried about that team. That's my pick there.
Okay, so I know it's not recency bias because I do agree with you. That's who I would have put there too. I want to make the caveat. I like Fowler's team, but it's just a really competitive slot starting after 7. So I really like Fowler's team. I'm going to put him there only because I do like Adams. Again, it's similar to what I was saying before, but for the opposite reason. I just like Adams' potential more. And I think that Adam does have the ability to just fix that tight end position with Austin Hooper, and then he really is a playoff team. So I'm putting Fowler at 7. I'm going to go ahead and move Adam to 6 then.
Yep. I'm comfortable with
I
that.
think that's fair.
And so are we saying that Matt Magnuson is 5?
Honestly, maybe 4. I think I would put him at 5, and just to I guess we could. I would put him at 5. Yeah.
You put Magnuson at 5, or you put Jake?
I'd put Matt Magnuson at 5.
Wow, that's.
I'm actually gonna put Jake at 5 personally.
So my only argument here are we talking points rest of season or playoff chances? Because Matt is not going to win his division, and Jake has a very good chance to.
I think we have to draw the line. It's playoff chance. Who has the highest chance of making the playoffs? And it's not going to be buys for this tier. So, and this is how we've done it before. So it has to be based off of either points or record. Who has the highest chance?
Yeah, but is it okay? But the second question I have is it just making playoffs, or is it where we think they could actually potentially finish in playoffs? Because like I potentially think Matt Meggs and Jake will make playoffs. And I think Matt Meggs has the potential to go further.
I think Matt Magnuson's team is probably better, just not by enough that his division makes it up for. Like, he still has to, he's not going to win his division, which means he has to compete with everyone in this tier from 4 through 8 for those 3 spots, essentially, right? He has to compete with all those to actually make playoffs, whereas Jake actually can win his division. And he's in second right now, but only behind by a few points.
Yeah, but
I'm fine
Jake
either
does.
way.
Yeah, Jake just doesn't get the bye though. He won't get the bye over a match for Hio. So to me, it's like
I don't think that's necessarily true with those injuries. He's only a game behind right now.
Yeah, I suppose so.
It's a long season, and those are big injuries.
Yeah, I'm fine going. I'm fine going Matt Magnuson, then Jake, with the caveat that we just think that Matt Magnuson has a better team.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it's close enough.
Shout out to you, Matt Magnuson.
Yeah.
Don't say anything for you.
Hitting on those running backs was huge for him this year. I think he'll get more points than Jake the rest of the season, but based on the start and based on their current teams and divisions,
Sure.
I
could accept that.
I don't know if I agree because I didn't really parse what you guys were saying because I was going to put Jake at 5 and Matt at 4. Is that in line with what you were saying?
That's in line with what Cody was saying.
That's what I was saying originally.
The opposite.
He was saying because of the fact that Jake can actually win his division, he doesn't need to fight so hard to go to playoffs as opposed to Matt Magnuson.
Yeah, but doesn't Jake have high competition in that division too? So it's like higher.
No, but it's just the fact that he still has a chance. Yeah. Like, it's the fact that even if he misses it, then he's just competing just like Magnuson is.
To me, it's almost to the point where Magnuson is probably going for the 5th and 6th seed. Like, maybe he will get that 4th seed with record. Like, what are the odds he beats Trujillo?
Right.
Pretty dang low. And he's already 2-2. So, like, I'm just putting all those factors in there. Jake and Fowler are both already 3-1. I think Jake's going to win the division. But
yeah, but I just like Matt's team more.
That's what I said. We can caveat it with the fact that we think that Matt Magnuson's team is better. That's why I said that.
I think they're an exact push to me. So I truly don't care. I don't care that much either way.
4.5 and 4.5.
Yep, that's totally fine with that.
I cannot decide. Like, it's very push.
I honestly think O'Brien down to Fowler are all within like a 5% chance of making playoffs within each other. They're all so close.
Yep.
Which is
Did
super fun.
we put Adam below Fowler?
Adam is just above Fowler.
Okay, that's okay.
So right now
that's what I thought we did.
Jake, Matt, Adam, Fowler, Larry.
That's okay.
As the potential playoff teams.
Perfect.
Most likely.
Yeah, that's the most interesting part of this discussion is how that shakes out. And I'm
those are
interested
gonna
to
be
see
fun.
week to week, if we do this weekly now, how those teams might shake out or with injuries and other if one of them makes a trade to address major needs. So that's really exciting.
Yep.
I'm gonna go ahead and put me at 3.
Yeah.
And like in a tier. I don't want to say a tier of my own. I'm gonna say a top of the tier between Jake and Matt. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree with that. I think you're you have the best team and you're highest in points out of all those teams, but not by enough to put you in your own tier.
Yeah. I think that's what clearly will get you to the playoffs is just points.
Yeah.
At this point.
The thing that separates myself a little bit, but none of a tier between Jake and Matt, is that I don't have any holes. But I don't have any major players that are carrying me, which is why I'm not in that tier of 1 and 2.
Yep.
I don't have the studs. And so it's the classic like Dynasty team that can compete every year, but won't win it. So
and the 1 and 3 start's tough too.
Yeah,
if you were
that's the biggest
if you were 3
factor.
and 1, I would say definitely in the tier by yourself.
Yep.
Yeah, I've had a rough go of it.
Yeah, I mean your points have been fine at least. So like you're competing for 5 and 6 spot, and I think you'll get one.
So. Yep, I think so too. Okay, so I think from here it's just Trujillo and Sam.
Yep.
Is there any reason to, since there is no debate on this, is there any reason to believe that those two will change over the course of the season?
Yeah, running backs for Trujillo are very concerning,
right, yeah.
I think. I mean, if he drops 2 games here back to back, I don't know, it's looking risky. And yeah, if he drops 2 games and Matt wins 2 games, they're basically a push.
It's a good point.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I think Matt Trujillo could fall off depending on running backs, but I think as of right now, he's clearly in that number 2 position.
Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and say, too, that Sam's team could fall off if he doesn't get a defense. I mean, we're looking at a pretty critical...
I'm streaming in Dynasty. I don't know if anyone has ever done... I picked up a defense every single week so far.
It's pretty phenomenal.
It doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, I'm sure it makes a world of difference for your team.
It got me 10 compared to -3 from my other 2 defenses this week, so I'll take it.
Okay, just because I liked this tier conversation, for next week, I'm going to draw the lines here and just read through our power rankings again. We have in tier 1, Sam and Matt Trujillo. In tier 2, we have me, Jake O'Brien, and Matt, and I'm going to make a little insert one above. And then in tier 3, we have Adam, Ben, and Laramie. And that's it, right? That's tier 3.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Followed by tier 4, which is Skonieski and Eric alone.
Yep.
And then tier 5, which is Mike and Cody.
You.
Okay. So those are our tiers. I'm really interested to see if those change from week to week.
Yeah.
I'm sure they will a little bit, but...
Especially that middle there.
That middle one there is going to get jumbled every week. Because I remember even last week, I was just like, oh yeah, Ben Fowler's like higher than Jake and Adam to me. But now it's like...
So just the Kenyan Drake news is basically what puts you down for him? Or
yeah.
Not news, but just him not playing well for a week.
Yeah, it could be something like that. I think it also could just be taking another look at their teams between Adam and Jake and just feeling more comfortable with them. Like, Ben isn't like solidified above either one of those teams, in my opinion, right now. Like, I don't know.
Sure, I still think his starters are a lot better just based on the talent he has. But if he does have another injury, he's basically just done. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, regardless, I really like where our league is at, and it's super competitive. We're getting some awesome buy-in from a lot of the owners. People are paying attention for the most part. It's really fun, and I'm happy that we actually got a chance to talk about this week.
Yeah.
So without further ado, I was going to move on to what normally was going to be talking about previews for next week, but I'm sensing that we might be running out a bit of time. It's been a long podcast, so I'm going to skip that. So I'm just going to say, any other final notes from week 4?
Not really. I guess good luck for week 5.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to kind of go into week 5, see how the matchups play out, and see where everybody kind of ends up at the end of the day. But, you know, thanks for listening. If you made it this far, that's awesome.
Yeah. If you did make it this far, I'm going to go. I don't think anyone makes it this far ever. They probably get bored.
I don't think I even make it this far when I'm trying to re-listen to our podcast.
That.
Oh, shit. I mean, I listen all the time.
If you're right, no one will hear you say that.
Right. That's the point.
But if you are still listening, if there's one person, you should hit what's the button? Is it subscribe?
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Say that. You should.
Do you know there is like a little watermark we could start putting on our videos?
For what reason?
Because it says like and subscribe on the lower right, so people just know how to do it. So we could be like and subscribe, and all of a sudden it pop up, bam.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't really care if people like and subscribe our videos.
No. I want to clarify. The only reason
You're not a view whore
is that if we forget to make a notice that we made a video, you're already subscribed, so it might come up in your feed.
Yeah, I think we forgot that last week. But I'll post it to Sleeper this week after I post it to YouTube.
Yeah, because I was banking on one of you. Not actually banking. It didn't matter.
I think the biggest thing we want is just comment. just let us know if like you like this format that we're doing. Let us know what changes you would like to see, because at the end of the day, this is just tailored to whatever people want to listen to.
Yeah, if you guys even care.
Yeah, do you guys even care?
Or if anyone, Laramie, wants to come on and defend his team.
Oh,
that'd be pretty
yeah.
sweet too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we should definitely start doing a segment like that. Now that the season's settling a bit more.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of fun. So, well, with that, thanks again, everyone, for listening. It was a lot of fun to talk about fantasy for another scintillating week. And we'll hear from you and talk to you soon. Goodbye.